Welcome to Engineering the Hard Problems, a podcast where we discuss real challenges around how we build and deliver at scale. Today, what we are going to talk about seems simple, but it's a tough one when it comes to delivery: client centricity. For delivery team, it's about how we build, how we prioritize, and also how do we deliver when things are really not going well. So today we will explore what does client centricity mean when it comes to delivering under real constraints. I am joined by Shea, Heath, our Chief Client Officer, who will talk about it from a client and business lens, and Lakshmana G, our Senior Vice President, Client Analytics, who will look into this from a data and analytics lens. I am Reena Gupta, Vice President, Digital Solutions, and I will be anchoring parts of this from a digital experience lens. So welcome to the show, Shea and Lakshmana. So the first question is, how do you define client centricity and how do we effectively measure it?
That's a great question. One of the things we want to do when any client engagement is have a joint description of the value we provide, and that varies by client. And so for us, client centricity is measured by what value we provide, by when, and being able to measure that throughout the course of the relationship. And we have some proprietary frameworks we use within Epsilon to quantify how we're doing, whether it be quality, whether it be on-time delivery. And we use those metrics to have conversations with customers. It's important to meet clients where they are and jointly talk about your success that you're achieving with the solution we're providing.
That's an interesting one, meeting the clients where they are. From your perspective, what are the typical gaps that we see for organization like us in terms of what we are intending to deliver and what we deliver?
Yep. Thanks, Reena. I think glad to be here. Just extending some of the things that Shea said at the beginning of this particular question is there are two things. One is on process and second one is on people. What do we mean by on process? Where we see a bunch of gaps is like what we call as an account planning process, right? So you sit down within your organization, try to identify all the products and services that we deliver to our clients, and then having fully understood what the client wants to achieve in the short and medium and long term, you list down what is it that we are promising and committing to the client, and when are we going to get that delivered by, how we are going to measure it, and who is accountable for it, right? All of that is actually distilled in what we call, what most organizations call as account planning process. It manifests itself as in something that we call account plan, right? That's on the process side. Then on people side, you do have this single important stakeholder internally who's called account manager, right? Here is this single person who is accountable and committed to deliver our promise and the vision that we promise to the clients, right? So I think, so those two things need to be in place, right? You need to have a pretty solid plan and you need to have a pretty solid individual who is accountable for delivering that. Oftentimes a great person with a weak plan and a great plan with a not so solid individual would result in suboptimal outcomes for our clients. I think those are the two places that we generally see major gaps. It's very simple, but then it's very hard to deliver that to the clients on a daily basis.
Thanks, Lakshmana. That's a good point. When we think about the account plan, one of the things is to have joint success metrics that are unique to that client. You need to know what problem they're trying to solve in their own voice. And one of the things we do at Epsilon is we document and share with the entire project team what those success metrics are. And every quarter we review them and make sure that we're meeting and fulfilling those expectations of the client. We have a quarterly scorecard that we work with the team to contribute to and take action plan on when we're not meeting it.
So again, from an account plan perspective, you spoke about it, having that solidified, the account growth, and again, you spoke about aligning with clients on the success metrics. I think very true from how we should engage with a client, so very true. In terms of the the delivery team, which is really our technologists, our engineers sitting here as part of the delivery organization, how should they operate? How should they operate differently than what they are doing today to be able to deliver on the ask of client centricity?
I think one of the important things for folks to recognize is every interaction with the client matters. And what we ask for the delivery teams to focus on is looking beyond their four walls. They look at problems end to end where possible, because one of the things that a client experience could happen is one team focuses on their piece of it, then there's a handoff to another team, and they hand off to another team. We really want people to extend beyond their boundaries and make sure that no balls are dropped. That's kind of thing one. And the second is a better understanding of how either the tools or the services we're providing, how the end customer is experiencing them. Because it's one thing to know the value we're providing. The second is to know how the consumer is using the actual tools we're providing for them, and we want to make sure that it's a good experience overall.
Yeah. Thank you for the interesting perspectives, Shea. I think that made me think. I think the way that I was thinking about this is there is some fundamental difference in terms of how engineering teams and delivery teams should approach client centricity. I think when it comes to engineering teams, I think your focus is on products, right? So like you are owning a certain product roadmap and you're owning a set of features and functionalities that you need to deliver by the roadmap. So it's a very important role that customers play in terms of shaping that features and functionality that appears in your roadmap. And oftentimes it's done through listening tours and everything. Like you go to the clients and then you show them your roadmap and then you seek feedback from them on what they think are important and what is not important. I would say not every client's feedback is equally important. Maybe you need to sort of weight it according to how successful that client is. Let's say if you're in the business of selling marketing platforms and things like that, how successful that client is when it comes to marketing, loyalty, and media, and then how actively they are currently using your platforms. I think those are the ways that you can weight what the clients are saying, so that the really a high quality set of features and functionality would come up on top, right? So this is fundamentally a customer driven product development. So customer is clearly at the core of influencing our product development initiatives, but engineering teams prioritize products, right? So I think that was a difference. And then when it comes to the delivery team's responsibility is to take the product and then meet the clients, on where their requirements are, right? So that requires enhancements, customization, ensure that our platforms are delivered appropriately so that they achieve their business objectives, right? So one client would have a disproportionate impact in the way that delivery teams prioritize them, versus not one client would have a disproportionate impact on the product side. Multiple clients influence your product roadmap. So in both cases, client is at the center of this, but then the degree to which one client can influence your outcome is different depending on whether you are in the engineering organization or a delivery organization. Let's move on to the next question in the topic of client centricity. The one question that I wanted to start with you, Reena, is can you give us like one concrete example of a client-centric decision that has negatively impacted us in the short term in terms of impacting our revenues, etc., and how did that shape our long-term relationships with our clients?
Often we have seen that our customers come to us where they have a very broad vision, right? They would want to transform their customer experience, or they are talking about modernizing their customer journey, right? But they do not have a clear roadmap. Typically in these cases, we may invest and we may deliberately make an investment where we work with the clients closely to define this roadmap for them. So it would typically mean, we will bring in our senior experts, we will hold some advisory workshops with them. We will try to really break down the problem into more actionable items, right? What this does really is that it helps build a clear strategy and a clear roadmap, right, for the client so that they know what they need to action on. So this is a win-win on both sides. From our side, from a short-term perspective, and if it's an investment, it may look like counter to our revenue goals and operational efficiencies. But then what it really does is builds the client's trust in us, right? And we have typically seen that this leads to a much longer relationship with the client. Meaning, I can give you an example. Very recently, a mid-market retailer from a US, they had reached out to us. This was back in 2024 December, and they were wanting to us to assess their entire CRM ecosystem, right? And we kind of looked at that. They said they will pay us for the engagement. We did a short paid discovery engagement for them, which was around 10 weeks. But again, the problem was quite vast. They were wanting us to look at the entire CRM ecosystem, right from having siloed data as to how they were building their personalization, to how the measurement framework was in place. So there were a lot of gaps. So we really had to go beyond the contracted time period to really work with them, understand that problem. Another complexity was that there was organizational changes at their end, right? Their leadership was not getting aligned. So we really worked with them through a period of 1 year, the entire last year, to really help them navigate some of their internal challenges, get the alignment with the leadership. And now when they are launching their actual tech transformation, we are their preferred partner because we understand really their business very well and they trust us for not only looking at selling services, but really coming in to help them deliver their outcome. So this is one example that I can think of.
Yeah, to add to that, one of the mantras that I've lived by for my year in services is around unhappy clients don't buy more things.
Yes.
So it doesn't matter if we were the reason why they were unhappy. We could have done everything within our power to deliver everything we said.
Yeah.
But if they're not happy, they're not going to continue doing business with us.
Yeah.
So there are times, and an example would be they ask, their leadership team doesn't set the expectations with their internal groups about the platform or whatever, or the services we're providing.
Yeah.
And so leadership team moves on. We're working with the day-to-day team. They don't understand what's going on, and they're saying, "Well, this service doesn't make any sense."
Yeah.
We've delivered every single thing on time, on budget. We've calculated all the risks.
Yeah.
But we have to solve the problem. We can't just walk away and say, "Hey, we did everything right."
Yes.
So it requires, as you mentioned, Reena, it requires investment in sometimes strategic consulting. If it's a platform, sometimes it requires investment in data to make sure that they understand what's in their system and we describe it for them.
Correct.
But there's a lot more hand-holding. And one of the things we try to do to get ahead of this, because it can happen at clients, is we have customer success teams that are always talking about who's using the system, what value they're getting out of it. And so we always want to talk about value from day one with the clients, just to make sure they understand what we're doing and when, and that they're realizing the value all along the implementation or the ongoing service.
Yes. No, I completely agree with that. I think it's almost similar to a personal relationship. You can do everything right, but what the other person feel about you is very important, right? So it's not about like having only a set of metrics and checking off. Like it's at the end of the day, do clients feel like, hey, we are equally invested in this relationship and we are going to achieve the joint metrics or the outcomes that we set out to achieve, right? That's equally important. Let me move on to the last question in this podcast, which is like, what is the one thing, Shea, that you wish every individual in an organization to understand when it comes to client relationships that would immediately improve the way that they operate on a daily basis?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think everyone at the company needs to understand our solutions. So I'll use loyalty as an example. Understanding how customers use it, understand the actual logins, experience what it's like, go be a participant in a loyalty program for some of our customers. I think you'll really start to experience not only the end consumer, but also our customers' experience on how they use the system. So I would highly encourage, and we have a highly international team, so that does present a challenge. And so we have a lab here in Bangalore where we can simulate that experience for folks. And I think that's an important thing for folks to really, whether you're an engineer and you're designing the product, whether you're implementing the product, or whether you're a service provider who's doing strategy or analytics on top of it, understanding the end-to-end flow, then you can be part of that ecosystem with the customer. And then when something isn't going right, you have a better understanding of what their experience looks like.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and just to add to that, I think, and when you start doing those things right, you really truly become a partner of the client, right? You are no longer a vendor per se, and I think that mindset should show in how each of our team members are interacting with the client on their day-to-day basis. It's not necessarily sticking to, hey, this is what we were supposed to deliver and this is a solution. So go beyond recommendations, and at the end of the day, it's about delivering value to the client. And when the teams start working with that mindset is where I think the trust really deepens and you really build a very strong relationship.
Yeah, very good points. I think, yeah, sometimes you don't have the luxury of starting as a partner. The clients may reach out to you and say, yeah, I don't know you, I don't understand the organization. Here is a point solution that I would like you to offer. In that case, you start out as a vendor of sorts, like working with the middle management, then you deliver that well and then earn your way up. And then eventually you become a partner. It depends on who brings us in the client organization. Is it a CXO or a middle level leader? And we need to be ready to do what they expect us to deliver for that solution. Thank you, Shea and Reena, for joining this podcast from Epsilon called Engineering the Hard Problems. So with that, we come to the conclusion of today's podcast with Epsilon. I would like to end this particular podcast with a quote that most people would have seen when they walk into some of the retail outlets here in India. It is a famous quote on customers by Gandhi. It goes something like, the customer is the most important visitor in your premises. He is not dependent on us, rather we are dependent on him. And he is not the interruption to our work, he is actually the purpose of it. So with that, thank you for joining us in this podcast with Epsilon. We look forward to seeing you all in our next podcast.